When you and Doug were born. You know how much I love both of you. And look who came on set. Our little, yeah, hello. He says he wants to be in the picture as well. Yeah, that's Bandit. Bandit is very upset that he isn't right in the camera, but he's checking out all of the equipment. He's going to chew the, at which point it will go, plop.
Outline the way interviews are supposed to work is sort of look at me, the camera. Purpose of this is meant to be shiny and happy. So if there's any question that doesn't make you shiny and happy, just say that's not shiny and happy, okay?
Okay. So. You probably should ask me about my ancestors so you know your great ancestors. I guess my mother was the most important person in my, at least in my young life, because she was sort of molding me. I think that she hadn't done all the things that she had wanted to do in her lifetime up to that point, and I think that you know, she was responsible for my ballet life, even though I asked for dance lessons, or my teacher, my kindergarten teacher said that you know, your daughter has to have some dance classes. I guess because I was dancing around all the time in kindergarten. You know, she was the one who drove me to lessons, and I loved to dance, but eventually it felt like an obligation. You know, we've done all of this, now what are you going to do? You've got to get into a company, you've got to, your life will change. And that's how I felt when I was in New York, now in Ballet Theater, and I thought, that's going to be my whole life. I mean, there isn't going to be time for anything else or anybody else. And that was frightening.
Okay.
I fell in love with Barry,
Okay.
and I wanted to be married and have a nice little house with a picket fence, and just what all the young girls think of as probably Ira. I mean, he constantly expresses his love for me. He makes me feel good when I'm depressed. My children have just made me into a different person. I mean, being a mother is probably the best thing in my life. I've learned to be tenacious, to work very hard at what you do so that you can do the best that you can. I mean, if you decide to do something, damn it, you know, do it better than anybody else if you possibly can. And if you can't, do it. And certainly I knew that in my ballet career that I felt that I was never going to be a dancer as good as the prima ballerina of any company. But I was proud that I had gotten where I was. But I was ready to move on after less than 2 years.
What's your earliest memory?
I have no idea. How many people do remember their earliest memory?
My answer to his question when I do this interview was, I forgot my earliest memory, all of them. What is your favorite memory of me?
Of you. Oh, before you were walking, I have this picture of you. You had a saddle with 2 guns. And you would move yourself around by pushing forward while having a pacifier in your mouth. So you had your two guns in the gun belt and your pacifier. And who couldn't, just say, oh my God, that is so incredible.
What is your favorite memory of me post-drinking age?
Well, your doing magic was pre that time, so let me answer that some other time.
What's your favorite memory of your problem child?
He has never been a problem child. I love him dearly. He has tremendous tenacity, and you do as well. Aiming for the moon. Why not? I think I must be responsible for that, because I think that I have always felt that you boys should go for it if there's something that you want to do. And I've always said you should do what you want to do. And if you can't do that, find the second best thing to do, and then just go for it. I mean, there's no problem in failure in the first thing, and it isn't really failure. It's just that if you find you change your mind, and therefore you no longer have the interest in it, and you become interested in something else.
What's your favorite memory of Ira?
When I went to see him late in the afternoon, because I always had to have late appointments for any doctors or anything, because I couldn't get away from work to go and see anyone. So after he examined my eyes, he says, "Do you ever stay in town and go out for dinner?" And I said, "Yes." And that was a surprise. I didn't know anything about his non-medical profession.
What's your favorite memory of LV?
I thought she was very pretty and very well-spoken, and I thought that Eric had a nice girlfriend, and I hoped that it would go somewhere, and it did.
What's your favorite memory of Evan?
Well, he was such a cute kid, and he had on like a cape that must have been popular on television or in a movie, a superhero.
Are there any funny stories of your family?
How about the weird and scary one? When my brothers made me lie down on the floor to measure me for my coffin because I had been attacked by a dog, and it was very traumatic for me, and they knew I was really scared. So they wanted to raise it to another level of being scared, because they made it sound so real by saying, "She's so small." That's pretty good. They can get a much cheaper coffin, when it's 3 foot, long.
Are there any funny stories or memories or characters from your life outside of family?
Well, I remember my first little girlfriend. We were great friends and were constantly going back and forth. Her name was Diane. She studied dancing. I left to study in London it was the Sadler's Wells Ballet School when I was 15. And it was very sweet of her. She threw a bon voyage party for me. But then I didn't see her that much, and I got married, and we were in different cities. She got married, she got divorced while we were in New York, and I haven't been in touch for a number of years. I feel bad about that.
Can you tell us about bullwhips at work?
Oh, my boss, his name was Steve Edelson, had a bullwhip, and he would sometimes come from behind you or whip that lash. You didn't know he was coming, and you would just hear this terrible snap. Very bad, very bad. I mean, if he were to do that now, he would be out so fast. I did not think it was funny at all. I don't think that anybody felt that it was funny. I mean, we knew that he was the boss.
What are you proudest of?
That I helped my wonderful sons become as wonderful as they are now. I had to be some influence that I felt that you picked up, and I don't have any regrets about, well, I might have spanked you once or twice. I don't regret those. You deserved them.
How has your life been different than what you imagined?
I don't think I ever really imagined what my life would be, except as a little girl who I wanted to dance on the stage. And then I did that, and I hoped to find the man of my dreams. I wanted to have children. I think I've been very lucky. Well, I never, ever would have thought that I would ever become a stock market person, to become a futures trader or work on Wall Street. I mean, that was the farthest from my imagination. I read some article, it was about a man. He decided to become a stockbroker, and I thought, yeah, I'd like that. And how I ever got into the business with no degree, that came when I was 61 years old, knew nothing about any of these things, but I thought it sounded like a neat career. Yeah.
How would you like to be remembered?
By being a loving mother.
You got a slam dunk on that one. Again, you don't have to answer this, but do you have any regrets?
I don't think so.
What are your hopes for the future for me? If this was our very last conversation, is there anything you would want to say to me?
Aim high and go for it.
For your great-great-grandchildren listening to this, we have a lot of hopes pinned on Mr. Matherly, because are there any words of wisdom?
Stay as loving as you are. It's very apparent to me that you as a family are very loving of each other.
If you could interview anyone from your life, who would that be and why?
I would have to think about that. I would need time. Actually, it would be God. He did some very impressive things, but he's not always kind. I wish he would make all of his creatures good people.
When did you first find out that you would be a parent?
Well, you know, there had been 2 miscarriages before Doug was born, so it was my 3rd pregnancy. With both of those, I miscarried at about 3 months. It was heartbreaking because we had planned that we would, get settled down. We needed money, and my modeling career was what helped Barry do his internships. So I couldn't get pregnant at that time. So after waiting and then deciding, okay, now we're gonna, have children, it was pretty devastating. When Doug was born, obviously, we were so elated. It was just, finally, a successful pregnancy. But I had not picked out names because, I was afraid, I think, of picking out names.
How and when did you come up with Douglas?
I guess in the hospital. I really don't remember how we chose either one of the names. Douglas sounds English or Scottish, and that was my background, was English and Scottish. And your name is Eric is very Scandinavian. One of his grandparents was German and one was Swedish.
Do you remember when you got pregnant with me?
The nurse in the labor room said, "I'm delivering a 7-pound girl." I said, "It could be a girl, but it's not 7 pounds."
How has being a parent changed you?
Well, it's a family. Having a child means you have a family, and basically you have obligations, particularly to your children. Maybe you don't go to movies as much. I can't remember what anniversary it was, but we were living in Manhattan. You boys, I think, maybe had not been born yet. And there was another fellow's name was Dick Esser, who I think you have met a long, long time ago. He wasn't married at that time. And we would go to movies with him, and because he didn't have a girlfriend at that time, and I guess he was sort of lonesome, and we were one time decided that we were going to go to 3 movies and 3 restaurants that day. I think we might have done 3 movies, but not 3 restaurants.
Do you remember when your last child left home for good, otherwise known as the time that you kicked me to the curb at the brutally young age of 30?
Were you 30?
Something like that.
Yeah. I don't remember the day, but I thought it was a good idea for you to have your own space that you could bring your girlfriend to. That was the main reason.
When and where were you born?
Chicago.
What was it like?
The day that I was born, what it was like?
Yeah. What was the weather in Fahrenheit?
Yeah, I don't know. I was crying a lot, so I don't know.
Who were your parents?
My father's name was John Howard Watson, and my mother's name was... Oh, this is going to be... someone of the worst memories. Will you cut this part, please? Esther Louise Spohr, and then it became Esther Watson, and she had 4 children. They had 4 children: Jack, David, Bill, and Margaret, me.
What was your relationship with them?
Oh, I always felt loved by them. Happy with the way my life was being spent. Yeah. I think it was good as most people could expect.
Tell us about the first time your mother put you in a dance class.
I don't remember the first class or anything. I do remember my dance teachers' names. My first one was Alfred Floyd, and I learned tap dancing. I learned baton twirling. I learned acrobatics. And I learned ballet. I wanted it, but I also sort of missed a lot of stuff. And I don't know that I felt that at the time. I think I felt that, I was aiming to be a professional ballet dancer. But I had no time after school to meet anybody, so I didn't have many friends. And certainly no boyfriends. I didn't hang out with the other girls, at the soda shop or wherever people did hang out, because I never knew. I knew I was good, so it's a good thing to do something that you do well. It seemed as though one thing would come after another, and it did. I feel badly how few people do get there and work as hard. I was very lucky that I had the body for it. I had beautiful arches to point your toe, the right way, A lot of people their feet don't look right, and that can interfere with a career. So I was slim. I've sort of had it all for long legs. They love long legs in ballet. I had them. So that was pretty much it.
Do you remember the first time you knew that you were really good?
Well, I thought I was better than I knew, in that I was in one dance teacher's classroom, dance room. I never saw other dancers other than the dancers that were in that class, and I was the best. So I didn't have any comparison. When I got to New York, I found out that there were a lot of very, very good dancers. When I went to London, I found there were a lot of them.
Tell us about your brothers.
My brothers? Well, Jack was, I think, 8 years older, and he was very nice to me because he had his 2 younger brothers to pick on. So he treated me well. And then Dave would sometimes be a little mean, and so would Bill. So I got picked on. Things with the swatting the dish dryer rag, getting them, right at me. And if I cried, my mother was always, "Oh, stop being a crybaby." But that's the way I was raised, with these older brothers, seeing what they can do to make me trip on something or have to do some work for them because, or have to be alone, and not one of Bill was supposed to babysit me, and he put me in one of the bedrooms, in my parents' bedroom, and he had fixed up an electrical thing for his car, for his bicycle. It would sound an alarm or something, but all I knew was it was wired. And so he wired the entrance to the bedroom. He said he did, and if I left there, I'd be electrocuted. So he could go off and do whatever he wanted to do, and he wasn't babysitting me. So other than being threatened with electrocution and some other things as well, we had fun.
Do you have a story of retaliation?
No, I never had a chance to. Well, Dave did introduce me to Barry when I was on tour. I had something like 6 weeks off between tours. And I said, I want to meet some men. And so this was my first date, Not first date in my life. I had a sort of a boyfriend in New York. When would that have been? I guess, yeah, before I joined the company, before Ballet Theater. I mean, all we did was go to, some movies, and nothing very stressful or romantic. I don't know I don't think he ever kissed me or anything.
Tell us about your first date with our father.
It was a blind date with Dave and his girlfriend, and Barry asked me, what I wanted to drink, and I didn't drink, So he got me a Missionary's Downfall.
What is a missionary's downfall?
I don't remember. But it was one of those restaurants where they put lots of fun things in the glass, and it was a neat restaurant.
Apart from him giving you a lethal drink, what was your other first impression of him?
I thought he was very tall. Seemed very nice. Good looking.
And did he ask you out right away, or what was your second date?
I think he did ask me out shortly because I think I saw him most of the time that I was before I went back to on tour again.
How long was that tour break, or?
I thought about 6 weeks or so. I had been on tour for I think 15 months. A tour through the U.S., and I think it was like 100 cities. That seems like impossible, but some of the theaters were movie theaters. Well, they probably had been theaters before you really got a lot of movies. What's the name for the 30s?
You have to ask it.
It's a different age.
Person,
Yeah, they had people on stage, comedians and singers. Vaudeville.
Yeah. Do you remember your first kiss with him, our father?
No, I don't.
When you went back on tour, was that tough? Because at that point you were obviously pretty, connected with him.
I knew I would miss him.
And did you have plans to reconnect?
I don't know that we wrote to each other.
How and when did you reconnect?
At the end of the next tour, I decided to, I sort of wanted to go to school. I didn't want to leave Barry again, I figured he's a keeper, and the fact that I got into Northwestern, I'd only had a year and a half of high school. I mean, all of the courses that I would have been taking before getting into college, I didn't have to write. I'd never written papers or anything, very significant. I had no math. I knew nothing in math. I guess I got in with, I think that the questions at Northwestern were all sort of logistics. If this and this is so, then this and this is so, then who married John? Yeah.
Do you remember how long was it before you got engaged?
That spring, or late spring.
Do you remember him proposing?
Yes, I do. This is the story about the ring.
Okay, yeah.
He was constantly taking off my ring, and then he would put it on his fingers, and he would just, play with his fingers or whatever, and then put the ring back on me. And we were at a show at Northwestern. It was called, well, I'll have to think of that. That's a long time ago for me to remember that, the name of the show. But the show was performers from it was called the WAMU, like WAMU. It must have been letters, force something, in any case. So we were in the audience, and he took off whatever ring I was wearing on my right finger, and then was going through, my left, and he left it on there. And and the lights came up, and I can't remember whether I just glanced down right away or whether he had to say, did you notice anything, or that I don't remember. But so the ring was put on my engagement ring or wedding ring finger.
In a dark theater.
In a dark theater.
How do you respond then?
I don't remember. I don't think I screamed or anything.
Or you left him hanging?
I don't think I screamed, or I have no idea what I did.
So you don't know if you told him yes, no, or maybe then?
Oh, he knew it would be yes.
So I think that was remarkably clever.
Well, he was trying to figure out the size.
That's probably the cleverest story I've heard.
Yeah,
Figure out the size.
And it would have to be his. He probably couldn't get it all the way down his little finger.
Had you been expecting this question?
Well, I certainly wanted it. No, there had never been discussions about living together. We had a platonic relationship the whole time.
In that given time period, was that the norm?
I only knew that you slept with a guy when you got married to him.
Had you sort of made that clear to him, so he knew the ground rules?
Yeah, I mean, he figured it out.
Yeah. And how long was your engagement?
Not very long. Maybe 3 months, I don't know. If we got married in June, it was June or August, I'm not sure. The wedding was very simple because that's what Barry wanted. It goes back to his father, I think. I don't know if his father was living at the time, but he had told me he was dead. I think that somewhere I got his father's death date. I think it was before we got married.
Was this the equivalent of a justice of the peace wedding?
The wedding was very...
Was it the equivalent of going to the court?
We got married in a tiny little chapel on the campus of Northwestern, and it was used very frequently for people who were students there and got married there. There were maybe at the most people, I would think 12, 14, it could have been 9. I just can't remember. I'd have to add up.
Your best friend was not invited.
Oh yes, she was. She was my bridesmaid. When we were little girls, we had, we were planning for our future, and of course, we were going to be bridesmaids for a maid of honor for us when we got married. And then when we were in New York, and she got married and didn't ask me, I was really crushed. And I didn't go to the wedding. We were in New York. I mean, it meant that much to me, that I thought these promises that we made to each other when we were little kids.
How long was that after your wedding? This childhood best friend came to your wedding, right?
Yeah, we lived in New York, in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah.
We didn't move until it was like a year and a half. And we had an apartment, actually a nice 2-bedroom apartment, $50 a month, maybe $55, in Chicago.
I have to cover a little bit the brief period when we were insanely rich. Describe that apartment.
It was on Park Avenue. We were on the second floor, I believe, which is really the third floor. It had 4 or 5 bedrooms. It had 2 rooms for the help. So Barry used 2 of the bedrooms, and there was a John for both of those 2 of the bedrooms were his office, a waiting room and his office. And then you went through, and this was all sort of in the main hall into the apartment, but we put up a door to sort of lock off the rest of the space. So we had 2 bedrooms, and we converted 1 bathroom into a library, and his secretary spent time there. Then there was a living room, a dining room, and sort of like an area that was for chinaware and stuff, and then a kitchen, and then those 2 rooms for the help.
Did you bought this with a mortgage, or you rented?
Rental, and that was like $5.50 a month. To go from $55 to, no, it couldn't have been $550.
Well,
I don't know what it was.
Right.
It had an elevator, and it was on Park Avenue, so it was pretty neat.
And how long were you there?
Several years.
You moved to New Rochelle when I was 6 months?
Yes, roughly that.
Can you tell us about why that move, about that move?
Well, the public school system in the city wasn't wonderful. Private schools were outrageously expensive. I sort of wanted a playground and other little children for you to play in, like we had in Chicago. The house in Chicago was sort of interesting. We'll do it some other time. I guess I had made very good money as a model in New York. I started modeling in Chicago after, when we got married, and I did well. Like people would ask, how do you feel, as a model, having your photo taken all the time? And I said, I just keep hearing the cash register, click, click, click. You can do another smile.
Do you remember house hunting for the house in New Rochelle?
New Rochelle? Yeah, I do. We fell in love with it. It was so big. We were able to sell a lot that was in the back, which would have been part of our backyard. We sold it to people that you then knew. They built a house on the lot. I don't know how we felt we were going to afford it, because I wasn't going to be modeling. Oh, I didn't model after you were born.
Did you know at the time that was a mansion?
Yes. Well, it was just, it was so reasonable compared with the people next door. Not that it cost less, but it should have cost, much, 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 much more than it did.
Was it haunted or something?
No. I think that before selling the lot, I think it was $60,000. And we sold the lot, and now it was $40,000, because we sold the lot for $20,000, I think.
How did the idea for selling a piece of the property come up?
I think the real estate agent.
Do you want to tell us about moving in? How do you fill up a mansion with furniture?
The furniture was, except for living room chairs and the dining table, that was what we had sort of on the first floor. We had a dining room table and chairs. We had chairs that we had in the apartment in Manhattan, in the living room. And We bought some outdoor metal furniture so we could sit outside. There was another whole room on the first floor that I don't think we ever used it. I mean, it was screened in. I don't ever remember. I walked into it, I think.
Tell us about Jimmy and Mary. Did they come with the house?
We heard about other people were doing this. This was something sort of a new thing. All of the psychiatrist friends that we knew seemed to be buying houses and having enough room in their house to have live-in help. Evidently, everybody had saved some money. I think people didn't like big houses like that because they knew that it would cost a lot of money to run it, and the taxes would be, higher. So anybody getting out of college, doctors it's later than regular college because then there's med school and internship and residencies, and so that's what we did. And then, of course, I had to sell it as quickly as possible. Oh, because we had already planned and had put the money down on a new house on Long Island. And, and bought a boat that was shared with another psychiatrist. So the boat, the house on Long Island, we had always intended to sell the house in New Rochelle, but we hadn't sold it. We'd have to walk away from the other house, the one on Long Island, just lose the money that we'd paid for. So it was an awful lot going on at once. But that has happened to a lot of other people, and you survive it. Even when it can be very belittling to have to go in some tiny apartment or something.
You want to tell us about your first job on Patricia Lane?
On Patricia Lane, I sort of started with something, but I didn't particularly like it. But Joe Gelbands had a friend who knew that this friend of a friend was starting an agency to place people in jobs. And I thought, well, I've got to do something. I did it for like 2 weeks or something. I didn't get a job for anybody. And I can't remember. It must have been my first job, must have been on Wall Street.
And it was that article that you talked about before?
Yeah. I said, ask everybody if they know. I knew that I would have to work for a firm for very little, and then I would have to take the test to become a stockbroker. You're supposed to be learning on the job, learning how to become a stockbroker. Don't know how I passed that test either.
And do you remember your first day or week on the job?
Well, I wasn't a stockbroker yet. Not really. How many years ago? 60 years?
What is the first memory you do have?
All I knew was, I don't know anything. It's sort of like, I couldn't get into a ballet company until I really became a really good dancer. I knew nothing.
Do you remember your interview or first day or first week at Chemical Bay?
Well, I had a job before that. All I did was manicure my nails and go out for lunch because it never got off the ground. Yeah, I was going to be, this was going to be a new department in an existing firm that was owned by American Express. I should have banded to Pat.
Yeah, how long did the manicuring job last?
6 or 9 months, and then I went to chemical.
Do you remember your interview there?
No.
Was it Steve who interviewed you? Was that...
No, because my first job there was to talk to and do trades that can't come in from a branch. Somebody wants to buy this new Fannie Mae, or they want to buy some Treasury securities. And basically, I wasn't dealing with, well, yes, I was dealing with the traders. I'd still have to get the prices and everything. But it was in a separate little area of the department.
How long before you went to work for Steve?
Well, he wasn't my first boss, and I don't think he was my second boss.
He was your most memorable boss.
That's true. Steve was after we came back from Maryland.
Oh, really?
And I just got that job because I went back to the job that I had and then moved forward.
When we came back from Maryland, the job you had was they opened it up again?
Yeah, I think that they laid somebody, they put somebody in a different department. I didn't know anything about that at the time, but...
Well, it's a good testament to you. Do you remember your interview with Steve?
No, I didn't interview with Steve. I was in the department before he was.
Do you remember his first day there?
After I was there a number of years, Steve ran these things where you would go into his office and he would chat with you, and then whatever he says would go above their boss or whatever. And the first time I got such a glowing, review, and it was Steve, and he said, I wanted to promote you again, but then I'd be reporting to you. And then the next review, oh my goodness, needle picking. And you could do this better, you could do this better, you could do that better. And then he gave me a $10,000 raise. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be out of here, I mean, it was the highest raise I'd ever got. It was a lot of money to me.
Any other chemical bank memories? Or
no, there were certain after hours kind of things. If people would get married or move away or whatever, there would sort of be parties. We'd go to the local bar, down there. And those were usually kind of fun.
When you were at Chemical, how many other women were doing what you were doing?
When I first got there, I was told that there were very few women doing it, maybe 10 people in the country. But I have no idea whether that was true or not. But I was the first one at Chemical to be handling institutional accounts. This is all in bonds, government bonds, treasuries and treasury notes and bills, not the stock market.
Did you feel how weird and special that was?
I thought it was going to be very boring. But I needed a job.
How long was it before you like and be obsessed by these charts?
What skill? Well, I went from stock to bonds, and my going from stocks to bonds was, you want to know why I left where I was?
Yeah.
I was hired as an assistant to one of the men who was in the institutional department. It was a stock brokerage firm, and this department didn't speak to your neighbor next door or anything. It was just institutions, like GE or a big fund of some kind. And I thought it would be very nice if I could eventually be an institutional person, because then I wouldn't have to be calling my neighbors to buy a stock. So there was another woman there. She was older than I was by maybe 20 years, had been there a long time. And I thought that, and she worked with a guy, and I thought that they were pretty much equals. But evidently, he was the senior person. She would evidently do some co-working with him, or a lot. And when this man left the firm to join a different firm, she thought that she was going to be inheriting all those accounts. And as soon as he left, they took all of the accounts away from her. She had to start at the beginning. So she was just an assistant or on her own or whatever. I was an assistant at that time, because I didn't know anything about the stock market. So I went to a headhunter and I said, I want a different job. They had found me this job, I think. So I went back to them and said, I want something different. And I didn't really say that I wanted something different, but I said yes to go on an interview. And it was a place that was going to be building a government bond department. And the other part of the firm was doing municipal bonds, and they wanted to start doing government bonds. And now I had never done any government bonds, but I needed the job, and I took it. And it never got off the ground, the government bond department. I asked one of the guys in the municipal bond department when they were closing this part where I supposedly worked, but I really just manicured my nails all the time. And he said, well, I hear the chemical bank is hiring in their government bond department. So that's how I got the beginnings there. And that's where I was dealing with picking up phones from branch, managers who wants to buy some bonds for their customers. So I was strictly in not a trading area. Maybe they would say that, but I wouldn't. Eventually, I got promoted to the regular part of the department, and then I was only talking with institutions.
Anything else work related there that you want to talk about?
Not now.
You want to tell us about your first date with Ira?
It was very nice. We went to a German restaurant, I believe. It was a long time ago. We had a nice time.
You remember what you ate?
No.
Tell us about the proposal.
We were sitting down in the living room and chatting, and he gave me 2 rings. So,
did you say, should I grow some extra hands?
It was very sweet.
Had you expected that?
No, that was a surprise.
Did you say yes, or you kept him on hold?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that, Ira. We've only
sure
dated 10 years.
Sure how that Tell us about the wedding.
Our wedding, I think that we should do it a little later.
Okay.
I'm tired.
Okay. Do you want to pick this up tomorrow or next week, or?
Let me tell you in the morning.
Okay.
Or afternoon. You're going to leave the stuff here. Okay, here.
That was part one. Fantastic. Thank you.
Most people put it up here.
Well, one thing, you often want heart level, because if it gets too close, metaphorically, heart level, because if it gets too close, you can get more plosives and stuff like that. If you could hold on to one memory of your life forever, what would that be?
You'll have to give me time on that because I don't know.